Frankfurt is not only the financial center for Germany, but in my opinion is also one of the financial center within Europe. So this is, in my opinion, is triggering a very important positive competition between the different financial centers, and this is bringing Frankfurt always a step ahead, at least trying to be a step ahead and succeed in competition with the other financial center. This is a very positive fix, I guess.
The voices of two Bocconi alumni at different stages of their careers, working in the same vibrant European city, Frankfurt. Some challenges are the same, others are very different, but both can offer valuable insights if you're thinking about working abroad. What does it really mean to work and live in Frankfurt? Can the city match expectations of young talents? What skill set is needed to start a career there and succeed? These are some of the questions you'll get answered to in The Takeoff, the podcast which shares with you stories and tips to work abroad through the real experience of Bocconi alumni. I am Giulia Canestrelli from Bocconi Career Services, and in this episode I will take you through what it's like to work and live in Frankfurt through the stories of Francesco Manuele, Managing Director at Intesa Sanpaolo Frankfurt branch. Hi Francesco.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
And Tania Di Biase, Graduate Program Participant at European Central Bank. Hello Tania, welcome.
Hello Giulia, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Francesco, let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners? Where are you from? What's your background? And what brought you to Frankfurt?
Yes, thanks, Giulia. So I was born in Sicily, moved to Milan because of Bocconi University, clearly. Joining Intesa Sanpaolo at the end of, at the time of the merger between Intesa and Banca Commerciale Italiana. Since 2011, working within the international network of Intesa Sanpaolo in different geographies.
Wow, so I think you have an international background. Maybe we will dive deeper into this topic later on. Tania, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, Giulia, thank you so much. So my name is Tania. I was born and raised in Milan. I attended Bocconi quite recently. Actually, I graduated just almost 3 years ago. And I graduated from BM, so International Economics and Management today, and a double degree between Bocconi and LSE in Politics and Policy Analysis. And I started working at the ECB right after my graduation, and I'm currently still working at the ECB in various positions. So I have changed quite a lot within the institution and seen different areas of the institution as well.
Francesco, I would like to start talking about Frankfurt and, let's say, first impacts and the first impression. As you mentioned, you have quite an international background. So I would like to ask you, since Frankfurt has a very specific reputation, it is serious, structured, and very work-focused. So how does it compare with other financial centers you've worked in?
So, Giulia, I think that to answer to your question, we should broaden the perspective and look at Europe and the EU. So Frankfurt is not only the financial center for Germany, but in my opinion is also one of the financial center within Europe. So this is, in my opinion, is triggering a very important positive competition between the different financial centers, and this is bringing Frankfurt always a step ahead, at least trying to be a step ahead and succeed in competition with the other financial center. This is a very positive fix, I guess.
Well, thank you. Very good point of view. And Tania, talking about the work environment in Frankfurt, what were your expectations before moving and what did you actually find there?
Yes, so I think this is a very good and relevant question for especially potentially young listeners and that are about to start their career. In my experience, there are two specific, let's say, two different points to be raised. One is with respect to job-wise expectations, and the other are city-wise expectations. On one hand, I work and Frankfurt is home to one of the major European institutions, And that was very aligned with the expectations I had, given that I did a European and international public policy double degree between Bocconi and LSE. So it was very much the logical continuation of my studies. And therefore, Frankfurt met fully the expectations I had of working in such a European and international environment. On the other hand, city-wise, I think Frankfurt does not necessarily come to mind as a city to move to when you're young. And this might be a downside for some people. On the other side, it gives you the possibility to come to Frankfurt without expectations. So city-wise, I think Frankfurt is very much a city to discover with this respect. So it met my expectations in the sense that I didn't have any expectations on how life in Frankfurt would be.
And continuing on the work-wise perspective, Francesco, we have talked about, of course, the financial hub, and Tania just mentioned European institutions. Which sectors do you see as particularly dynamic or fast-growing in Frankfurt today?
So, Giulia, of course, I think the European institution that we have in Frankfurt, they are reference points. Of course, first is the ECB, what comes to my mind, but also please do not forget AMLA. Since last year, the Anti-Money Laundering Authority is also part of the city. So this is an important reference point today and even more in the coming years. On top of that, I would also focus the attention to the several consultancy company working in Frankfurt, the also specific legal expertise or fiscal expertise that is needed for the international company that are sit in Frankfurt, in particular all the financial institutions. And also, please do not forget that Frankfurt is one of the main data center in Europe. So this is also an addition if you want to see something going into the direction of the future and technology. So Frankfurt is definitely the place to be.
Wow, so a lot of sectors, kind of a melting pot of professional sectors, I would say. And Tania, talking about your experience, you started your career in academia, first at Bocconi and then at LSE, and now you're working at the European Central Bank. Do you see any similarities between your previous role and your current experience? And of course, on the other hand, are there differences, and what are the main differences?
Yes, so I think this is also a very good question. I personally work at the intersection point between academia, policy, and project development as well, because I work on large financial market infrastructure projects. And with this respect, I think there are two similarities and two big differences. The two similarities are rigor and problem solving. So in academia, I believe that you need to be very rigorous in the research that you provide and the methodologies that you apply. At the same time, maybe you wouldn't associate problem solving with academia, but I think that in fact, it is a series of problems of where to find data, how to process data, what type of research question you need to have. And hence, you need to become very accustomed to solve these problems that come up. Similarly, at the ECB, you need to be very rigorous. The decisions that are taken and the projects that are done affect all Europeans or all, for sure, Eurosystem citizens. Therefore, I'm very happy to share and to know that the ECB has a very rigorous type of work and methodology to work. Similarly, you need to solve problems every day, as I'm guessing also in Francesco's job. So I think these two are big similarities, and two big differences are probably the stakes. As I said, if something is done wrong at the European Central Bank, it affects millions of people. And therefore, even as a junior, you really feel the responsibility to, let's say, hold and respect the fact that there are such high stakes and exposure. So since my first day of work, or maybe first month of work, more so, I was soon exposed to very high level people, high level groups, and I had to perform accordingly. So this was very motivating. And I think this is a bit different to academia in the sense that in academia or in my previous experiences, it would be more of, let's say, a loner work in the sense that you were working on potentially research projects and so on. And the exposure came only very later once projects were fully concluded, while it's not the case at ECB.
Tania, you gave me the space to start introducing another topic I would like to talk about, this skill set. Francesco, based on your experience, which skills do you think are essential for young people approaching the job market?
So, Julia, I will start first with commitment. Commitment and dedication. You have to be 100%, more than 100% focused on get things done. This is key. You have to bring your energy in order to move forward in each one of your tasks or activity or responsibility. Second point, in my opinion, the flexibility is needed because you always have to consider what can be done different, what is the reality that I have in front of me. So if there's a need to change the path that I was planning to do, this needs to be done. The third thing is trust. Your team member needs to trust on you, and you have to feel the responsibility of this trust. This is key. Last but not least, in my opinion, is to be ready to accept the error. This is part of the real world. Since we are working, we are trying to do whatever we can to get the things done, but of course, we can we are human beings, so we can miss some pieces. And this is part of the game, and you have to be ready to accept this. And of course, willingness to learn, this is by definition, is, if you want, is the backbone that you have as a starting point.
Tania, practically speaking, and working in the ECB, what hard skills and of course soft skills do you think are needed?
Yeah, I think first things first, I align completely with what Francesco said. I think the skills that he mentioned are as important in the private sector as they are at the ECB. And so for whomever is listening, I think that is a great point to start. Then for when it comes to the ECB specifically, the ECB is a massive institution with very different areas within it and very different skills needed for different areas. So in terms of hard skills, I think it would be, let's say, Bocconi prepares very much their students to face whatever challenges come up at the ECB. So I think a degree from Bocconi with this respect in terms of hard skills prepares you very much. So accounting, economic analysis, critical thinking, and so on. But I think what is more interesting is the soft skills that are required in an institution, a European institution like the ECB. And beyond what Francesco already mentioned, which, as I said, is completely aligned, I think there is also the need to have a very high level of adaptability, in the sense that what is done at the ECB in many of the areas is not something that you would strictly or specifically learn at university. So the ability to adapt your skills to an environment that is different than what you've learned and also looks at issues from a different perspective, I think is a very relevant skill and a very useful skill once you are working at the ECB. And the second is patience. When you are starting to work as a young professional, which I am, so it's something I can very much relate to, you are very much accustomed to an extremely fast-moving environment, which is true also for the ECB, but career-wise, since it is a European institution, I believe there are longer time periods and different ways of, let's say, growing within an institution like this. And to have the patience to understand it, I think is also a very vital skill to succeed in an institution such as the ECB. But in my experience, at least.
Francesco, Tania, we are nearly at the end of this episode. I would like to conclude with a quick fire round questions. Would you like to?
Sure. Bring it on.
Ready.
So let's start with the first one. Is Frankfurt more an international city or a local one?
I think...
Who wants to start? So
go, Francesco. I think you have a great definition.
I go for it. So I like to define Frankfurt and combine Frankfurt with a word that is glocal. It's a global city with a local dimension. And this is, I think, is the really a clear picture of what Frankfurt is.
I agree 100% with what Francesco said. Francesco has lived in many cities, so I'm sure he has a very good perspective. In my own experience, I've lived in London, I've lived in Milan, and Frankfurt is quite small compared to London, for example, but it is a very international city, and it really gives you a local feel as you live here. So definitely a global city all the way.
And second question, one habit you have developed living in Frankfurt?
So going back to the local dimension, I really enjoy crossing the city by bike or just walking because the city itself is not so huge. So when the weather allows us to do that, I enjoy to bike and walk to the city, around the city.
Yes, and for me as well, I think doing sports in Frankfurt is great. Everything is very accessible, but as well something I've developed, maybe because I became a bit older, or maybe because of Frankfurt, I'm not sure, but it's cooking. So I started cooking a lot since I moved to Frankfurt, and I think, that's quite dear to my heart.
Wow, so sports and cooking, very good combination. Last question from my side. Would you like to share with our listeners one piece of advice for your younger self and, of course, for our students listening to this podcast aiming at work in Frankfurt?
Yes, I think definitely that you should consider Frankfurt as an option, not only for the working environment that you can find, but also for the city itself. It's a place, as we said before, this is a place to discover, and this will surprise you. Even if German is not your strong point, no worries. It's beautiful to go around the city and hearing different languages, and this is now part of the nature of the daily life in Frankfurt. So, welcome to Frankfurt. Looking forward to see you here.
Yes, likewise, I think I will follow Francesco's point and add probably an advice that I'm happy I followed when I moved, and I would give again to people that are moving: make and cultivate friends in Frankfurt. I think especially because maybe German might not be the strong point or the first language of people moving, to have a very good group of friends makes the city even more beautiful and really supports, also professionally, to be honest, because it gives you the possibility to be here and enjoy your time. So yeah, welcome to Frankfurt.
And of course, join the Bocconi community in Frankfurt.
Of course, we are very active. And we welcome all the people that come and move to Frankfurt.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Tania, for this really interesting episode. It was really a pleasure to have you at the Takeoff, Tales and Tips to Work Abroad, to share your stories and help our listeners plan their careers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, in this episode, we've learned that Frankfurt is a global city, and it is not only a financial hub, but a melting pot of professional sectors as EU institutions, law firms, consulting firms. And maybe restaurants are not as good as in Italy, so you have to start cooking by yourself. But of course, it's a city to discover. The Takeoff is available on all major podcast platforms. Join me for the next episode, where I will take you on a journey to discover what's like to work and live abroad with our Bocconi alumni. I'm Giulia Canestrelli from Bocconi Career Services. Thank you for listening.